Okay, forensic science students, I'm going to try to take some videos here of us, or me doing some flame testing of different materials. And I've got different fabrics in different Ziploc bags. And this is the fabric that I've identified as A, which is 100% cotton. Okay, so let me make sure that I'm getting all that on video for you here. I've got this video camera on my head, kind of a little webcam, and hopefully you kind of see that here. And here we go. So this 100% cotton here. What we're going to do is I'm going to take a little square of it, and we'll kind of look at some of the characteristics of the fabric, and then we'll get it close to the flame, and then we'll kind of burn it and look at the smoke and look at the ash, etc. So again, this is 100% cotton. You can see it stretches a little bit, and it's woven pretty tightly here into little squares, horizontal and vertical. So what I'm going to do here, kids, is I'm going to again get the fabric close. Some materials, some fabrics will, as it gets hot, it'll kind of recoil from the heat or from the flame. Others will not do that. So let's just kind of, we want to see really how easy it burns, the kind of smoke we get, the color, etc. So I'm going to just kind of hold it close. You can see it doesn't really recoil from the flame, and it starts to smoke pretty quickly here. And look at the color of the flame, look at the color of the smoke. I'm going to set it down here. We want to look at the smoke that's generated, the color of the smoke, the ash, or what's left, or the residue. Sometimes residue can be kind of hard or tarish. You can kind of see how easily this cotton kind of burns there. And kind of the residue, what's left over. Okay, so that's 100% cotton. Okay, the second fabric I've got here is actually yarn. And some yarns are, there's different materials that yarn is made out of, but a lot of yarn is what's called acrylic. And this is 100% acrylic. That's the type of fabric that's woven into these pieces of yarn that I've cut. And I've got just a few of them here, a few of the, and you can see that they could be dyed different colors, and there's, again, it's kind of woven kind of around each other, these different fibers. Again, let me kind of just stretch it a little bit. It doesn't seem to be too stretchy if I just kind of pull on it. And if I kind of pull on it this way, it kind of pulls these fibers apart or so. It looks like in these maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different strands are then just kind of woven together. So again, this would be yarn. We want to kind of hold it, we want to kind of hold it to see what it does as it gets closer to the flame, the heat, if it kind of recoils or if it doesn't. You can see it's starting to generate some smoke, even kind of beforehand. Okay, look what's kind of happening. It doesn't even have to be in the flame, and it's kind of pulling back. And there we're definitely seeing some smoke there. Now let's actually kind of get it on fire and see how it burns. Kind of sparkles a little bit, you can kind of see that. And look you're getting this kind of tarish, black tarish looking sort of residue. You can see the propensity of it to really want to just burn quickly. And then that kind of type of smoke we get, the color of the smoke, and then that kind of residue. It's kind of hard, it doesn't want to come off really too easy from the aluminum foil that I've got down here. Again, that was 100% acrylic. Okay, our third fabric that I have, I've identified that as C, is what's called burlap. And let me just take a small square of that out here. And show you a little bit about burlap here. Before we burn it. You can kind of see that it's got kind of a wide weave here with a lot of spacing, kind of air between the squares really. And when I pull on it, it seems pretty tough. Doesn't really want to stretch much. And you can see that some of the weaving seems a little darker than the others. And if I just kind of, it seems like if I kind of just stretch it a bit, I get a lot of fibers that kind of fall off. Again, we want to just kind of hold this and see kind of its reaction to heat before I even get it into the flame. Kind of a brownish color too. So let me just kind of heat it, and we want to again look at the propensity to burn, what happens when we kind of get it warm, if it kind of quickly goes on fire, or if it recoils some under the heat before we even get it burned, or before we even start to burn it. So you can see it doesn't really recoil, but it kind of, I really had to get it into the flame to really start. And there's kind of the color of the flame. Seems like it wants to fairly easily burn. I better get and we want to kind of look at what's left, the residue. You can kind of see the residue that's left. The smoke then that's coming off of it. Okay, you can kind of see the ash that's left. And the smoke. The consistency too of the embers. Okay, so that was C, which I'm calling burlap. Okay. The fourth different fabric that we're going to do some flame testing on is D, and this is the nylon robe. And I got this, I don't know, a foot or two of this nylon robe, and I cut it and then I dissociated it and the kind of the weavings of that. And I'll take a few of these kind of out to show you here. And you know, when I take some of the fabric and I kind of pull it, it really is not that stretchy. This is kind of whitish in color. I'm sure you can get it dyed. You can see it kind of frays pretty easily. Okay, again, we're going to burn a little piece of it. We want to check its burning characteristics, its residue, color of the smoke, how well it burns, etc. So here we go. Look at the flame and what's kind of left, the residue. You get this kind of this really kind of hard ball, this residue kind of sticks. Let me, kind of a hard ball type residue, kind of sticky too. Let me kind of get some more here. Boy, look at it, it just kind of recoils from the flame. And then you get this kind of black, tarish looking residue. See, if you just hold it close to the flame, it wants to kind of repel. And that's kind of the flame test of D, which would be nylon, and the residue you get. Okay, the next fabric I have, I've identified as E, and this fabric is 100% polyester. And so again, let me take a small square of this out and show you some of the properties of this, and then we'll get it close to the flame, and then we'll get it in the flame. So again, 100% polyester. And you can see it is a little stretchy. In fact, when I pull it one direction, it stretches quite a bit relative to the other direction. It's kind of hard to see the weavings. They're pretty small, aren't they? If I hold it up to the light, there's kind of what we see if I hold it up to the light. Looks like I have a little kitty that's a little kitty. Hey, you want to get out of that flame, little kitty. Hey, hey. Okay, again, what we want to do is we want to kind of hold it close and see kind of what the heat does to the material. As we get close, you can see it's starting to smoke. It doesn't seem to want to recoil much, but it gets on fire pretty easily. Look at the color again of the flame, and we want to look at the smoke generated. And the propensity to burn, what kind of comes left, kind of comes out after the embers. The residue, you can kind of see the residue's definitely a little different. See the smoke, the color of the smoke, the quantity really. Kind of tap on it here, the residue, and you kind of compress it down. Seems pretty easily compressed. You kind of can kind of compress it into kind of a little ball. It's still kind of even burning here too, isn't it? But it's getting kind of smaller and smaller. And so we had that big kind of rectangle, and this is kind of what we have left. Again, that would be, that's what we're calling E100% polyester. Okay, here's the next fabric that I have. This is actually what's called a blend. This is composed of two different types of fabric that are kind of put together. This is 65% polyester and 35% cotton. Now we've done these already as 100%, but this is kind of a mix. Polyester and cotton. It's not a full 50-50 mix. The polyester is 65% and the cotton's 35%. So let me grab a square out. Okay. And let me just kind of show you how it stretches, which it doesn't really want to stretch too much in either direction. The weave again is pretty small. We can see kind of the flames through it a little bit. Again, we want to look at how the material acts as we get it close to the flame, the color of the smoke, etc. So I want to kind of get it close. Kind of wants to recoil a little bit, doesn't it? And it's starting to smoke. So he wants to pull back a little bit, doesn't it? It's not quick to get on fire, is it? But it is quick to kind of smoke and recoil a little bit. Let me get it in the flame now. Look, it kind of has that little sparkliness too, or kind of a quick burn and a lot of smoke, isn't it? The color of the smoke. And look at kind of what's left again, that kind of oily, tarish residue. And it's kind of hard. That's all of that one, isn't it? Okay, this is what I'm calling G, fabric G, and this is PEVA, PEVA, and it's a type of an acetate, polyethylene vinyl acetate, PEVA. And this was actually, I got this and I cut it into little squares, and this was part of a kind of a tablecloth. Had this kind of checkered pattern, and now I've got the flame behind it. You really can't see through it very easily. It doesn't really want to stretch, and it kind of the back side feels a little different. this feels a little slippery here on this front side. And you can kind of see it looks almost plasticky, doesn't it? In the sort of light. It doesn't really want to stretch. Again, we kind of want to see how it acts as we get closer to the flame. We kind of want to look at the smoke, the embers, etc., the color of the flame. So I'm going to get it kind of close. You can see it's kind of repelling, trying to move away, and it's starting to shrink up a little bit. Even before I get it into the flame, it is sort of being repelled, the heat's repelling it. I don't really see much smoke yet, but it is starting to kind of curl up. There's some smoke, so let me get it on fire there. Kind of has that sparkly sort of flame too, doesn't it? And look at the different smoke. And let me set it down, and you can look at the embers. It's kind of that black tarish stuff too. Look at that. You can see kind of the smoke from it and how it's burning. Kind of makes that black tarish material, doesn't it? And look at it kind of bubbly. You see it kind of bubble there? Kind of stays on fire for quite a while, doesn't it? And there's that kind of a gooey black tarish residue. And there's kind of the smoke from it. Still kind of on fire, isn't it? Again, this was what I call G. Peba, and it's an acetate. Polyethylene vinyl acetate. And there it's starting to smoke some more, kind of as it's done burning. It's kind of the flame. Okay, so this is what I call H. It's a blend also. It's mostly cotton, 95% cotton, but there's some spandex, 5% spandex. So let me pull a small little segment of this out and show you kind of what this is all about. You can see I kind of cut it into rectangles, but it kind of wants to curl up. And so if I pull on it in one direction, it's really stretchy, and you probably know this about spandex. If I pull on it the other direction, it stretches a little bit, but not as much as this direction, really. It doesn't seem to be. You can see as I stretch it, you can see more of the light, the flame kind of behind. Look at the weaving here. Again, we want to kind of wants to curl up, doesn't it? So if I get it kind of close, kind of to the flame, we kind of want to see what kind of happens. Again, this is mostly cotton, 95%. It doesn't seem like it wants to recoil, really, or move back, and it seems like it kind of, I have to get it kind of close, and then when I get it close enough, it starts burning. Look at the kind of flame and the color of the smoke, etc. And the propensity to burn, etc. Again, we want to look at kind of what's the smoke, what's kind of left of it. Not a lot of smoke coming off of it, but that may change. You can kind of look at the color of the flame, what's kind of left. It definitely is burning kind of like our pure cotton. You can see the embers are definitely a little different than some of the others. And we'll just kind of let it burn here and you kind of get an idea. We don't really have that black oily residue, do we? Once it gets kind of done burning, then we start seeing a little bit more smoke, don't we? And again, if I kind of pound on it a little bit, you can see what happens with the smoke and the residue. Okay, so that is what I'm calling H. It's kind of a blend, 95% cotton and 5% spandex. Okay, in this bag, which I'm calling I have 100% silk. And again, let's just take out a square. Okay. You can kind of see this is kind of what the texture of this is. It's pretty tight. It didn't really want to stretch much, and the weave is pretty tight. You can kind of see that we can kind of see the flame. You can see the flame, and it kind of wants to rip, you know, along kind of that line here. It does have a little bit of stretchiness to it. You can kind of see all the fibers here. So if I kind of stretch it here, doesn't look like it wants to kind of dissociate too much. Kind of tight there. Again, this is silk, 100% silk. And we want to kind of get it, see kind of how it acts when we get kind of close to the flame, if it kind of repels a little bit or what, like what we've seen with some of our fabrics. So here I'm just kind of holding it right above the flame. And kind of see it doesn't really repel. We're starting to get some smoke there. And you know, there it starts catching on fire here. Then it wants to kind of go out. You can kind of see it doesn't really want to stay on fire too much. And then there's kind of the residue there. It looks like even some of the residue fell into my candle and extinguished it. I had a hard time even kind of kind of burning the whole piece, but there's some of the residue. It's not, doesn't seem too oily really, or hard. So that was 100% silk. Okay, so this is, I'm gonna now do a burn test on what I'm calling J. That's 100% wool yarn. I had a little trouble finding a garment that was pure wool, so I ended up going with this yarn. This is 100% wool yarn. And again, this wool would be a natural fiber. And so let me kind of pull it out. And it doesn't really stretch too much. It stretches a little bit. And again, it's kind of made of fibers here. Kind of see that there. And again, I want to get it kind of close to the fire and look at what happens. See if it pulls back or what. Let me just kind of move this candle here. Doesn't really seem to pull back, does it? But it wants to kind of singe and really start let's get it on fire here. Kind of wants to go out, doesn't it? See, it really doesn't leave much of a residue, does it? It's definitely not. Kind of just wants to go out. It's definitely not kind of a hard resin. It's not tarish. Kind of sputters a little bit, doesn't it? And just wants to go out. Look, kind of the smoke. It's kind of a whitish smoke, isn't it? Okay, well, let me try to pull another piece of that wool yarn out, and let's just kind of verify what we saw in terms of the smoke, etc. Grab a kind of a longer piece here. Again, it seems like it kind of wants to start smoking, and it doesn't really kind of get rejected by the flame or fire. It doesn't repel from it, and I don't really even have to get it into the fire where it starts kind of sputtering. You see kind of that white smoke. Again, the residue is definitely not oily, it's not hard, it's not really a plastic kind of congealed mess. Okay, so that's 100% wool. We have that we want to flame test is our unknown, and I had labeled this originally. I had labeled it a J, but since I found this wool fiber, I had to add another letter. So this is now labeled K. It's an unknown scarf. Okay, so here we have then our unknown fabric. So we tested a bunch of fabrics, and this is kind of an unknown. And here's kind of the story, and I want to kind of set this up for you. I bought my wife a scarf, and the scarf said it was silk. Well, my wife is like, boy, you're dumb. That can't be a pure silk scarf. I said, well, let's kind of test it. So, not really sure what this is. I'm thinking it's pure silk. My wife is thinking, no, you can't get a pure silk scarf anymore. It's too expensive or whatever. But I thought, okay, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not pure silk. So this is unknown, So here's again, let's look at some of the material here. There's kind of the weave. It doesn't seem to be too stretchy. You can kind of see the flame through it. We've just got this little rectangle here. It kind of stretches a little bit, doesn't it? Just that direction. A little bit in that way too. We want to kind of hold it up to the flame. We want to kind of see, well, what does it do when I get it close? Again, we want to compare this to the silk that we did on a different flame test. We want to see if we can get some evidence. If this is a truly 100% silk scarf, or if it's some other fabric. So we want to get it kind of close. We want to see, does it kind of shrink back from the flame? You can kind of see it does. In fact, I may want to put it on the forceps there. Get it here. We want to kind of look and see, well, what does it do as it gets warm? Does it kind of shrink back? You can kind of see it does. Look at it. It's not even really on fire, but it really seems to have some aversion to the heat. Not really smoking too much yet, but let's get it on fire now. Look at it burn. Kind of completely burns up quickly. The whole thing burns up, and look at the smoke, and look how it burns, and look at the residue that's coming off of it, and the smoke. Get this kind of hard, kind of that hard mass, kind of a tarry, oily mass. That's kind of it. So the research question was, is this, I cut that off the scarf. I'm thinking it's pure silk when I buy it, but maybe I got ripped off. What do you think? What's some of the evidence?